message you got or login box, Microsoft didn't come back. Well, it was cryptic. But yeah, city.ci is something that could show up. Yeah, or it could be city.
Okay, you just looked.
It was kind of, I was trying to think of a way of. Now,
Jonathan, can you hear me?
Angie, yep.
Hang on. You can hear me?
Yeah. What's up?
Hi, John. I'm good. How are you?
Good. Oh, just another beautiful Tuesday night.
Yes. How'd you do in the snow?
I didn't do anything. Have I been on mute this whole time? Yeah? Okay. Well, I had a good weekend in the snow. Didn't get out much, but that's okay. And nobody told me that everything would look so ugly when it was melting. And so the streets are a mess, but it was still really cool and I liked it. So that's all. Thank you for asking.
The Dalles has electricity and internet.
Good evening.
We are a city of the future, Alice.
That's right.
Chair Grossman, can you add the roll call to the agenda, please? You're muted. Can I unmute it? What? Oh, asked to unmute. That's all I can do. There you go.
There, I have no idea why I was muted like that. It's 5:30, time to call this meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Board to order. Roll call, please, Paula.
Stacy Coburn,
Present.
Mike Cronin,
You're muted, Mike.
he's muted.
Present. Sorry about that.
You bet.
Tracy Duchek,
Present.
John Frederick,
I'm here.
Gary Grossman,
Present.
Steve Kramer,
Here.
Darcy Long Curtis,
Present.
Kim McLaughlin,
Present.
and Dan Richardson.
Dan, you're muted.
Present.
There we go.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Next up is approval of the agenda. We have an item we need to add right after approval of agenda, which is election of officers. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Move approval as presented. Kramer.
It's been moved to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. It's Stacy.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by thumbs up.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, now it's time for election of officers. We need to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. The good news about the secretary's position is the secretary never does anything. So if you're going to get elected to a position, that's the best one. But let's begin with nominations for chair.
Mr. Chair, I might offer that we continue with the same setup that we have if everybody is acceptable to that.
All for that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Everybody thumbs up.
Discussion. So our previous vice chair is no longer on the board. So it
Correct.
can't be exactly how it's been.
Yeah, it can't be the same.
And I don't know who is secretary.
Full set. Well, let's elect a vice chair and a secretary. Nominations open for vice chair.
Who wants to do it?
Somebody's want to do it.
Who was the vice chair?
The vice chair was Scott Baker.
I'll do it.
Oh.
So yeah, we've got a vacant position. If nobody else nominate anybody, I'd nominate Steve Kramer.
Well, I heard Darcy Long Curtis say that she would do it. Is that correct, Darcy? Darcy, am I muted?
Yes.
Nope, you're on. But I don't hear
Darcy?
Darcy.
I heard someone say that they would do it.
You can't hear me?
All right,
I will do it. Yes, I said that.
okay.
Okay, well, if Darcy will do that, everybody, we still need to have an official vote. Please give a thumbs up to Darcy. And secretary, the easiest job on the planet. I'll name it Kramer for that. He's good at doing that, so.
Yeah, I'm good at doing nothing, aren't I?
Oh, man, life's not good if you can't take cheap shots at your friends.
Absolutely. Darcy, smile once in a while, will you?
Seeing no other nominations, all those in favor of Steve Kramer, thumbs up, please. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Next up on the agenda is approval of the minutes as have been sent to you. Do I have any additions, corrections, or a measure or a motion to approve?
Move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Okay.
That's McLaughlin will second.
Okay, Steve Kramer moves, Tim seconds. All those in favor, thumbs up. Opposed, same sign, which I don't think we have any. Now is the time for public comment. Do we have any members of the public for comment? I don't believe so. Not seeing any, we'll move on to the discussion.
There is. I think there is.
My video is probably slow there, Mr. Grossman. Don Warren here.
Yes, Don.
I just wanted to say hello on behalf of myself and the Main Street Board and staff and say I'm finally rejoining your meetings to listen in to see how we can help. And just wanted to point out that one of the things we are doing is we've spent $4,000 of our own money to get.
Excuse me, two things, Chair Grossman. If you're not speaking, can you please mute yourself? And Mr. Warren, I need your address for the record.
Oh, of course, I forgot my rigmarole. This is Don Warren. I live at 214 East 5th here in beautiful The Dalles, Oregon. And I am the current board president of the Dalles Main Street.
Thank you.
I got it all? Oh, good. Yeah, so anyway, what I was saying is we spent $4,000 of our own money to get registered through a third-party consultant to the the federal database of contracts and grants. And we did that in advance, knowing that there should be a lot of federal money for infrastructure projects being made available for any shovel-ready project. So I've got one of our staff members working half-time every day, all week long, every month, digging through that to see what we can provide. So if you guys have ideas or can share with me a list of shovel-ready projects that are ready to go, that'll help us focus what we're looking for. So that's the news for now.
Good. Well, thank you, Don. I'd encourage you to stay in touch with Alice concerning that information on grants and other opportunities. And so with that, we'll move on to our discussion items. For that, I will turn the meeting over to Alice Cannon. Oops.
Good evening, Commission or Board. Appreciate tonight. Happy New Year. It's nice to see you here. We've been working pretty hard this month on finances primarily, and we have two items on this first agenda item, which are annual reports that we file with you. And the first one is our annual audit. And our finance director and our finance department facilitate the completion of our annual audit each year, as well as that of the audit of the city's finances. And the second item, I'm going to turn it over to her in a minute to just tell you about our audit report, which is a good report. But the other item that's included in your packet is our annual financial report that is required by Oregon revised statutes. And it's something that we're required to advertise in a newspaper and for 2 consecutive weeks. And then we will mail it out to all the taxing entities each year. And the information that's included here is really a report out on how much urban renewal maximum indebtedness is remaining, which you'll see in the next agenda item, and some other required items. I like that this is a really good tool that is required by state law. I like that we have to do this because it gives our partners with the other taxing entities a real report as to where we are financially, and it also gives us a forum, hopefully, to have some more dialogue around that. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. As for the contents, I will assure you that we're going to get into those contents here in our very next agenda item after this. So if you don't have any questions about the annual financial report, I'll turn it over to Angie briefly to talk about the audit.
Good evening, Urban Renewal Board members. I am pleased to present you with a clean audit for 2019-20 for the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency. The auditors were Marina and Company, and they weren't here this evening, but we were free from any material weaknesses, and we had a clean audit this year. This year was our last year with Marina and Company, so we will be going out for RFP this year. And so that will be going out to all local entities plus the OGFOA, which will give areas that members of OGFOA opportunities to bid on doing our auditing services also. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, well, thank you.
I have a comment, Chair Grossman.
Go ahead, Darcy.
I just want to thank Angie and her team because it's very hard to get a clean audit like that, and I know she works hard at it, and I appreciate all the things that she does for us.
Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out, Darcy. I will use this moment to interject that we do have a new member of the commission or the board. Dan Richardson is joining us in place of Linda Miller, representing the city council, and John Frederick is continuing on. His term had expired, but he's made a commitment to continue on. So we thank you too, John, for continuing to participate.
And Chair, just to follow up on Councillor Long Curtis's comments, Angie and her team are invaluable to us as a city staff and urban renewal staff. I really appreciate the tremendous resource that we have in our finance department. And particularly, I appreciate all the help she's giving me right now, every day for the next few weeks as we wrap up finishing up our first draft of our budget. So thank you, Angie and team.
Thank you, you guys.
Okay, on to item 2, Alice.
Okay. As I mentioned, my first meeting that I attended, first or second meeting, I identified immediately that we needed to finish a comprehensive financial analysis for the agency. This has been helpful to me personally, just to know, do a pulse check of where we are, where do we stand financially. And this, I was hopeful, and I believe that this will lead to, it will inform our next steps of our decisions on where we go as in our future as an urban renewal agency. It'll tell us where we sit financially, how much time we have left, and it will lead, I hope, to you as a board setting some priorities in terms of the direction you want to go. So I'm pleased about this. I'm particularly pleased that I was able to work again with our consultant that we hired from Tiberius Solutions, Nick Popenick. I've worked with him in a few other cities. He works with urban renewal agencies and other public entities all over the state of all different sizes, and he comes well qualified. And I just really appreciated his help over the past few weeks. So with that, I will turn it over to Nick for his PowerPoint presentation.
All right. Thank you, Alice, and board members. Glad to be with you virtually. Apologies if I have any awkward setup here. I am out of my home at the moment due to power outages, and I am up in a guest bedroom at my sister-in-law's house, finding internet where I can for these sorts of presentations. All right, so I just need to share my screen now. Okay, I think I've got all that set up. So can folks see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
All right, and as Alice said, I've been a public financial consultant for, I guess, 15 years now. And for over a decade of that, I've had a strong focus on municipalities in Oregon, particularly working on urban renewal projects. So I've done, I guess, probably close to 100 urban renewal financial analyses for jurisdictions across the state. And what we did here was just a financial update of your plan, taking a look at the historical growth and revenues in the area, looking at your current fund balance and expenditures in the budget, and forecasting forward for the remaining life of the urban renewal area to see how much financial capacity you have and sort of the timing of when that capacity would become available. On this first slide, we're showing the last 9 years of growth in assessed value in the area. That's as far back as we were able to get it off of the county assessor's website. This area actually has quite a long history, so this stretches back much further beyond the 2012 horizon here. Nonetheless, it's a good sort of snapshot in time to look at these past 9 years, because it happens to capture everything from sort of the depths of the last recession all the way up to the current date for assessed value. And what we see here is that historically the area has grown by around 3.4, 3.5% per year. That's typical of a lot of areas that are mostly built out and are seeing just a small amount of additional construction take place on an annual basis. In the recent years, that has slowed a little bit. So over the past 5 years, we see the area with a growth of about 2.75% per year. It is common across the state of Oregon to look at any area and see average growth rates that hover right around 3%. That's because Oregon's constitution limits the growth in assessed value for any individual property to 3% per year, unless you have new construction and a few other exceptions taking place. So that 3% is sort of a barometer. Areas that are more than 3% tend to be ones that are experiencing new construction, and areas below 3% tend to be ones that are fairly mature and built out and might have a few properties, typically utility or industrial or commercial properties, that aren't able to achieve that full 3% maximum appreciation annually. And that's what we're seeing here over the past 5 years. Our forecast going forward, we weren't trying to do anything too tricky or reinvent the wheel. We just took that 2.75% trend line over the last 5 years and forecast that forward. That's what's shown on this slide. And when we compare that to the previous forecast that was done for the urban renewal area, this dates back to 2009. This was a separate consultant that did this work. And you can see that their forecast in the orange line actually did a pretty good job of tracking the historical values for most of the last decade. They did show that in more recent years, they were anticipating the area to have more robust growth and kind of put it on a higher trajectory. And that did not pan out to be true. But for most of the last decade, they were pretty much on target. And our forecast going forward just continues that more general slow and steady growth rate that has been experienced historically. For that TIF forecast, and I don't know if there are members of this board that are fairly new to the concept of urban renewal. I will, when I'm going over this slide, just kind of talk about some of the key terms that are important for urban renewal when it comes to calculating the tax increment finance revenues. So the tax increment finance revenues, what we call TIF revenues throughout this presentation, that's the lifeblood of urban renewal. In order to calculate it, we first look at the total assessed value of the area back when it was formed. That is the frozen base value, and we can see that that's 25 million. And every year we compare the total value in the area to that frozen base value, and the difference between them gets us our increment value. And you can see that in the current year, that increment value is 93 million. That value multiplied by the tax rates for all of the permanent rate levies for overlapping districts gets us the gross TIF revenues, the TIF to be raised in this area every year. And we can see that in the current fiscal year, that's right around 1.6 million. Over time, as that assessed value grows, the TIF revenue also grows. And so we can see that over the expected lifespan of this urban renewal area, from now till 2029, we do show that that gross TIF revenue is expected to increase from about 1.6 million a year all the way up to 2.1 million a year. So even with fairly humble growth, that does show increasing revenues long term there. Just to take a quick segue from our forecast of assessed value and tax revenue to talk about another key term for urban renewal, and that is maximum indebtedness. So every plan that was adopted post 1997 or so is required to have a maximum indebtedness, and every plan that was adopted before then had to take a legal action at the end of the 90s to adopt a maximum indebtedness. So your plan predates it, going back to 1990. That was before there was such a concept of maximum indebtedness, but then it adopted one in 1999. That established the limit to how much debt the urban renewal area could ever take out that would be backed by a pledge of the TIF revenues. And according to the Constitution, TIF revenues can only be used to pay off debt. So that is effectively a spending limit for the plan. No more than $14.2 million could be spent on projects or administration here. Now, in 2009, that was amended to increase that maximum indebtedness amount up to 29.1 million. And that's the value that's here today. I don't believe that this group is currently talking about any potential future increases to the maximum indebtedness. But if you were to discuss it, there are definitely limitations in statute on doing so. And it requires getting approval from the overlapping taxing districts and a number of other procedural hoops that would need to be gone through. So that's just setting a context that this urban renewal area has that limit, $29.1 million of debt that can be taken out and covered with TIF revenue long term. When we look at where the urban renewal area stands today on that measure of maximum indebtedness, it's used 22.8 million, so roughly 79% of that total capacity. So it has 6.2 million left of potential capacity to borrow in the future. That really is the amount of money that this urban renewal area can spend on projects in the future, but it's that amount of money plus the amount that you already have in the bank today. And that adds another 3.5 million or so in terms of the total available capacity for this urban renewal area. So you get to a figure real close to about $10 million of capacity if the urban renewal area wants to continue to invest in projects in the area. We took our analysis of how much maximum indebtedness is remaining, the amount of revenue that's currently in the bank today, your scheduled debt service payments for outstanding debt that go into the future, and our forecast of future tax increment finance revenues. Put all those things together and we had a new finance plan that looked at the future cash flow for this urban renewal area. That finance plan showed that if you're spending the money as it comes in on new projects, that it would be anticipated in fiscal year ending 26 that this area would reach the full amount of its maximum indebtedness. At that point in time, it could no longer be incurring new debt or funding new projects. It would then need to continue to collect TIF for a few more years until 2029 to be able to pay off that outstanding debt and then close down the district. So that's the timeline that we were looking at for this forecast. What we showed is that over that time period, the urban renewal area would collect right over $11 million of future TIF revenue. Again, that maximum indebtedness figure would be reached in 2026. And of that $11 million of new TIF that would be collected, you'd be able to fund $9.9 million of future projects. Now, why is there a difference between how much TIF revenue you'd collect versus how much you could spend on projects? The difference is that you have outstanding debt that you need to pay off. And so some of the money that you're collecting in the future needs to go to pay debt service payments on projects that have already been funded. One note, this slide has these two bullet points at the bottom of the amount of capacity for future projects and administration. One says nominal dollars, one says today's dollars. That's an artifact of the type of work that I do for clients across the state. The difference there is showing how big of a bite inflation takes out of your future revenue capacity. In this area, there's not much of a difference between those two numbers because most of your capacity is available now, and we're looking at a relatively short planning horizon. So that just shows that inflation really isn't going to be a major issue here. A lot of other cities that I talk to, when we're looking at their financial capacity and looking 20, 30 years down the road, inflation is a much bigger factor for them. This table I always include because I want to emphasize that urban renewal dollars, it's not a free lunch. This money does have to come from somewhere. Urban renewal is not an increase in taxes on individuals. So property owners don't pay any more because of urban renewal. So if the money has to come from somewhere, that means it is coming from the other taxing districts. So urban renewal is also known as divide the taxes. And that means a portion of all the tax revenue that would otherwise be going to these jurisdictions instead goes to the urban renewal agency. So what we've shown here is the total amount of foregone revenues that are anticipated to occur for each taxing district over the remaining life of the urban renewal area. So these aren't annual numbers, but these are instead the cumulative amounts over the next 8 years. We can see that the biggest districts most impacted would be the county, the city, the fire district, and the school district. Though you'll notice that there is an asterisk on the table for the school district, and that's because due to the state school funding formulas, state equalization formulas, local urban renewal areas don't really have a direct impact on school funding. So whatever happens locally to make property taxes go up or down for a school district, the state compensates for that out of the state school fund and allocates more or less revenue as needed to make sure that every district across the state is receiving the same amount of funding per student. So just an asterisk on that, but here we are showing all those foregone revenues for all the overlapping taxing districts. And to wrap up the presentation, just really repeating some of the high notes from earlier on. Historical growth in the area has been pretty slow and steady. Our forecast going forward assumes that that continues, looking at 2.75% growth in assessed value per year. That's going to take your annual TIF revenue and increase it from 1.6 million today to 2.1 million per year by the time we get to the end of this decade. Looking at how much remaining maximum indebtedness capacity you have, 6.2 million, plus the 3.5 million in beginning fund balance gets you your total remaining capacity going forward. That is about $9.9 million to spend on future projects. Though if you'll notice, the 6.2 and the 3.5 don't quite add up. There are some other line items that come into play there, interest earnings and other things like that. Based on this finance plan, we think that you would reach your maximum indebtedness in fiscal year ending 26. And then again, you would need to continue to collect additional TIF beyond that point, just so you could pay off the outstanding debt through fiscal year ending 29. So that was a lot of financial facts and figures thrown at you. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing now and then open this up for your questions and your comments.
And Chair and Nick, we are happy to go back to a slide or two if that would be helpful for the discussion. And again, I want to thank Nick, and also I would invite you to ask any questions you have, and we can also talk about the future a little bit if that comes into the conversation as well.
Absolutely. Do we have questions? Raise a hand or break in, or that's a very informative presentation, Nick. Thank you. So no current questions for Nick while we have him on the hook. Mayor, you need to unmute yourself, Mayor.
Just a clarification on the last page under conclusions. 6.2 million remaining for the maximum indebtedness plus 3.5 million fund balance. And that equals 9.7 million. And then the next line says 9.9 million. Was that supposed to be the sum of those two numbers, or?
Yeah, it's mostly the sum of those two numbers, but there are a few other revenue streams that come into play there. And so interest earnings, for example, on the fund balance that you have generates additional cash flow that makes up the difference there. So
thank you.
Okay. Okay, back to you, Alice, for what do you see as our follow-up?
So Chair, I've been thinking, this to me was pretty helpful in terms of thinking about where we go. And I know that this board has been very committed to completing the First Street project. And I'm pleased to say that I have hired a project management person to help me out. So someone who will help me part-time keep that project on track and work through issues with ODOT as we move to completion. And I'll be ready to give you an update on that in the next month or two. And so I see finishing that project. I see us thinking about the assets that we currently own. We own some property in the city or in the downtown, and thinking about the future and thinking about if there is a public-private development opportunity there. There may be some others that are coming up as well. I'm getting more inquiries, folks who are interested in building potentially housing in our downtown or nearby in the district. So that to me is hopeful. So we have some funds to work with. And then also another project that I would like to discuss as early as next month would be our grant program. I'd like to pull out our grant program, dust that off a little bit, and make sure that the way it's currently set up is consistent with the goals that you have moving forward. Or do you want to focus in a different area from a policy perspective to get the type of development or investment that you would like to see in our urban renewal area? So I think that would be a good discussion. I would like some direction on that, particularly because I am getting some inquiries, some people who are interested in investing in our downtown. They want to know where our grant programs are. Last time I saw a mention of a discussion about the grant program, for instance, was 2018, I believe. And at that time, the board informally said, if I recall correctly from the meeting minutes, to kind of put the program on ice for a little bit until we had set some priorities. So I didn't see a follow-up discussion since that time. So I would like to bring it back so we can talk about that and see how that fits into a bigger conversation about a strategic plan for us. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to come back to have a strategic planning discussion next month, as well as talk about the grant program.
Comments? Mike?
I was going to say that's a good idea. Works for me.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a good place for us to start. We do need to go over our the project list itself and determine how that ties in. And the other thing that really ties in with the grants, I think the problem was, and I wasn't on the board at the time that the decision was made to kind of freeze things, but we had really stopped promoting, I think, in the ways we've been promoting the grants and the opportunities. So we weren't getting anybody that was applying. I also would have a concern, which I'm not going to discuss in detail tonight, but a point where we were maintaining some historic buildings for nonprofit. And that doesn't follow what our policies are inside of our development plan. So a lot there to discuss, and I think it's a good place to stick a shovel and start digging in.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, I would like to add to that planning, strategic planning discussion, Ms. Cannon, the governance of this particular agency, which we've pretty much had on the table for a couple of years, and we seem to not want to have that conversation. So I would like to at least have that on the table as we move forward. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Chair?
Certainly.
Kramer? Board Member Kramer, when you say governance, do you mean the governing board, the composition of the governing board?
The complete makeup of urban renewal, yes. With the history of it, having an advisory board and the city council being the ultimate decision maker, we need to revisit that. I feel strongly about that because we have 3 city council members on this board, and I feel that 3 out of 5 makes a quorum. And I don't think that our special districts and our districts should be held accountable for these funds. So there's a bigger discussion that we should have. And you know, if I'm the odd man out, then I'm willing to go with the vote. But I don't think we've had that discussion. So that's my request. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Alice?
Chair, just I hope as we proceed with that discussion in the next month or so that you'll bear with me. I don't have all that history. So in terms of laying out some options for your consideration, it may have to be an organic discussion where the chair, the board brings up some recommendations and some ideas for consideration.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll be happy to meet with you and Director Cannon offline and kind of line those out so that you have a clear direction. Be happy to do so. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Steve. We'll take you up on that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Darcy.
Mr. Chair. So
Yes.
I just want to point out that all of that is very strictly defined in the ORS regarding the urban renewal agencies. So that's a good place to look for our options.
Good. Well, we'll have Alice dig into that as well. Okay, do we have any other questions or discussion on discussion items? If not, we'd move on to staff comments. So it's back to you, Alice.
So we are now at staff comments. So I want to, a couple things, and actually I heard this from the chair, and I want to let everyone know that we are live streaming this meeting. And so actually I violated this rule today. Just a reminder that any chit chat that we have at the beginning of the meeting is being broadcast across the world. So, so just be careful with that. I know that we try to refrain from having some chit chat. I did today. I mentioned a few things. So just in terms of meeting decorum, I know that Paula will sometimes mute all of us intentionally so we don't feel tempted to do that. And this will only be something we're worried about while we're on in this Zoom era. So just a reminder about that. Did you want to add anything more to that, Chair Grossman?
No, just if you've always wanted to be on YouTube, here's your chance, kids. So make sure you handle yourself well. You know how audio and video gets to you these days. So any other staff comments, Alice?
Yes, just in terms of some future agenda items, we can talk about governance. We will, as I mentioned earlier, talk about strategic planning for the direction of the agency. I would like to bring that back next month because it's really good timing, as you will soon be considering a budget as well. So that will line up well with a future budget discussion later this spring. I want to talk about the grant program, as I mentioned earlier, and the First Street project. I will want to bring an update on that and where we are. I haven't really been in a position to provide you one, but I will soon. So in the next month or two, we'll get you a report on that. And then lastly, I think it's time for me to do some status checks on a few of our projects, particularly rec building and a few others, just to make sure things are on track and the commitments that were made in our development agreements with all of those entities are being followed and deadlines are being followed, and I need to check on those and get a status report back to you. So with that, those are some of the items moving forward for future agendas. I'm happy to take any other ideas that you have for discussion for future meetings.
Anything for Alice for future meetings? Sounds like we'll have plenty to talk about.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And our next meeting will be March 16th.
Okay, thank you, Alice. It's now at that time for board member comments or questions. Do we have any comments or questions from the board?
I have a question, Chair Grossman, if I may.
Yes, Dan.
Director Cannon, thanks for all of your preparation and putting materials together this evening. The financial report was really helpful, at least to me. I have one question about the First Street project that you are working on with a consultant and will be bringing to us for discussion. What will you be bringing? Perhaps everybody else knows. I don't. Will you be bringing options? Do you have a design that you're working on? What's and I'm not trying to pin you down on specifics so much as just what are the parameters that you're working with right now?
I will bring you a status report on where we are. The last time that we came before the board, it was, and maybe we do a repeat of what we discussed at the board, and it was a very short presentation by our consultant team. I think we had 75% plans that were finished, and we can go through those again. If I recall, it was a PowerPoint presentation, and I think what I'll know more about and we'll have a little bit more momentum than we've had since the summer will be where are we going and how soon can we get there? I think our plan is to be finished with this project by summer 2023 at this point. We need to do some more work to get the plans ready for bid. There will be some steps we have to take through ODOT to get some review. We have some work to do with the railroad because the project boundaries cross the railroad there. And so anytime you work with the railroad, it takes a while. So I plan to come back with a detailed status report, and we can also review the plans. And I know Councilor Board Member Richardson, you have had some questions about project boundaries and so forth. So that's a good time to raise them with the whole group.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Any other comments or questions? If not, we will recess at this time to executive session in accordance with ORS 1926602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. I see no other members of the media other than myself, and so I'm warned that I am not able to release any of the information from executive session. I've had a request from the mayor to join us, He has joined us a number of times in the past. Does anyone object to Mayor Mays joining us in executive session? If not, we will adjourn, and I will see you in the next meeting.